Reducing one bill doesn't just save money. It proves something much more important. It proves escape is possible. And once your brain has proof that escape is possible, your entire story about debt starts to change. This video isn't about budgeting harder. It's about how momentum actually begins, and why one small win changes everything. Because momentum isn't about perfection. It's about proof. Most people think they need to fix everything at once. They think they need a perfect plan, perfect discipline, perfect execution. But that's not how change actually works. Change starts with a single crack in the wall. One small proof that the wall can be broken. And that's what we're going to explore today. Most advice treats debt like a math problem. Spreadsheets, percentages, discipline. But debt doesn't live on a spreadsheet. It lives in your head. It creates constant mental pressure, even when you're not thinking about it directly. And that pressure is what makes progress feel impossible. You can't spreadsheet your way out of a psychological problem. Think about it. You can know exactly how much you owe. You can have a perfect plan. You can understand the math completely. But none of that stops the feeling. The constant background anxiety, the weight that sits on your chest when you think about your bills, that's not a math problem. That's a psychology problem. And psychology requires a different solution. Here's how pressure builds. The same bills repeat every month. You put in effort, but the progress feels slow. And over time, your brain learns something dangerous. This isn't changing. That belief becomes psychological weight, and weight makes every decision feel heavier. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about what your brain believes is possible. Your brain is constantly learning from your environment. It's looking for patterns, and when it sees the same problem month after month, it starts to draw conclusions. It starts to believe that this is permanent, that this is just how your life is. And once your brain believes something is permanent, it stops trying to change it. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain is trying to protect you from disappointment. Eventually, your brain starts telling a story, not out loud, but quietly. This is just how things are. And the real fear isn't the cost of the bills. It's the feeling that the situation is endless. That's what drains hope. Because hope requires the possibility of change. And when change feels impossible, hope disappears. This is the critical moment. This is where debt stops being a financial problem and becomes an identity problem. You start to see yourself as someone who is trapped, someone who can't escape, someone for whom things don't work out. And that identity becomes more powerful than any spreadsheet, because you start to make decisions based on that identity. You start to act like someone who is trapped. When escape feels unrealistic, your behavior changes automatically. Motivation drops, energy drains, avoidance increases. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain is conserving energy in what it believes is a permanent situation. Your brain is actually being smart. It's protecting you from wasting energy on something it thinks won't work. This is why shame doesn't work. This is why telling yourself to try harder doesn't work. Because the problem isn't your effort. The problem is your belief. Your brain has decided that effort is futile, so it shuts down. It conserves, it avoids. And the more you blame yourself for this, the worse it gets. Because now you're not just trapped by debt. You're trapped by the belief that you're the problem. This is why big plans usually fail. They demand energy you don't have yet. And when they fail, they confirm the belief that nothing works. That's not a motivation problem. That's a strategy problem. You can't motivate your way out of a broken strategy. Think about the typical advice. Cut your spending by 50%. Create a detailed budget. Stick to it perfectly. These are all strategies that demand enormous energy from someone who is already depleted. They're strategies that require you to have hope and motivation before you've earned any proof that change is possible. It's backwards. It's like asking someone who is drowning to swim harder. The problem isn't their effort. The problem is that they're drowning. Reducing one bill breaks the pattern. It's not impressive. It's concrete. Your brain registers it as evidence that effort leads to change. And once the pattern breaks, momentum can begin. That's the real power of the first win. When you reduce one bill, something shifts. It's not about the money. It's about what that reduction proves. It proves that the situation is not permanent. It proves that effort matters. It proves that you are not trapped. And your brain registers this. It updates its model of reality. Suddenly, the story changes from "this is permanent" to "this can change." And that shift is everything. Motivation fades, but proof sticks. Your brain doesn't need hype, it needs evidence. And one small win becomes proof that change is possible, even if everything else is still messy. Your brain will remember this, it will use it. This is why motivation is overrated. Motivation is temporary, it comes and goes, but evidence is permanent. Your brain doesn't forget evidence. When you reduce one bill, you create evidence. You create a memory that change is possible. And that memory becomes the foundation for the next change and the next one. That's how momentum builds, not through motivation, through evidence. Here's the reversal most people miss. Discipline doesn't create relief. Relief creates discipline. Lower pressure restores clarity. Clarity restores energy. Energy creates momentum. It's the opposite of what we're taught, but it's how humans actually work. We're taught that discipline comes first, that you have to be disciplined, and then relief will follow. But that's not how the human brain works. The human brain works in the opposite direction. When you're under pressure, your brain can't think clearly. It's in survival mode. It's focused on the threat. It can't plan, it can't strategize, it can't see possibilities. But when you reduce the pressure even slightly, your brain comes back online. Suddenly you can think again. Suddenly you can see options. And from that clarity, discipline becomes possible. Not as a burden, but as a natural response to having options. One reduced bill saves more mental bandwidth than it saves money. It gives you space to think, to plan, to breathe. That space is your most valuable asset, because you can't think clearly when you're drowning in pressure. Think about what happens when you reduce one bill. Suddenly, that bill is no longer on your mind. You're not thinking about it. You're not worrying about it. You're not checking your account to see if you can pay it. That mental space that was occupied by that bill is now free. And that free space is where new thinking happens. That's where you can start to see other options. That's where you can start to plan. That's where you can start to breathe. And that breathing room is what makes everything else possible. People don't say, "I'm debt-free." They say things like, "I finally feel like I'm moving. I can breathe again. I'm not stuck anymore." That emotional shift matters more than numbers, because numbers don't change how you feel, but feeling different changes everything. Notice what they don't say. They don't say, "I saved $300. They don't say, "My debt-to-income ratio improved." They say things about how they feel, about movement, about breathing, about freedom, because that's what actually matters. That's what actually changes behavior. That's what actually creates momentum. The emotional shift is the real victory. The numbers are just evidence of that shift. Trying harder puts all the pressure on you. A smart strategy changes the problem itself. That's why willpower burns out, but momentum compounds. One approach exhausts you, the other energizes you. Willpower is a finite resource. You have a limited amount of it each day, and when you use it all on debt, you have nothing left for anything else. You're exhausted, you're depleted, and eventually, you break. But momentum is different. Momentum builds. The more you move, the easier it becomes to keep moving. The more you prove that change is possible, the more you believe it. And the more you believe it, the more energy you have. It's not about trying harder. It's about changing the system so that trying becomes easier. Not the biggest bill, not the scariest one. Start with the easiest pressure point, the one that gives you proof fastest. Speed matters here. You need to feel the shift quickly. This is crucial. You're not trying to solve the whole problem. You're trying to create proof. You're trying to break the pattern. You're trying to show your brain that change is possible. So, pick the bill that you can reduce the fastest, the one that will give you the quickest win. Maybe it's a subscription you can cancel. Maybe it's a service you can downgrade. Maybe it's a bill you can negotiate. The size doesn't matter. The speed matters. Because the faster you get that win, the faster your brain updates its belief about what's possible. The first bill doesn't solve everything, but it proves something crucial. That effort matters. That escape is possible. And once that belief returns, everything else becomes easier. Because belief changes behavior, and behavior changes everything. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for proof. You're looking for evidence that the situation is not permanent. You're looking for a crack in the wall that shows you the way out. And once you see that crack, once you know the way out exists, everything changes. You start to move differently. You start to think differently. You start to see possibilities you couldn't see before. And that's when real momentum begins. Not from trying harder, but from finally believing that escape is possible. And that belief, that single shift in belief, changes everything. Now it's your turn. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to pick one bill, the easiest one, the one that will give you proof fastest, and reduce it this week. Because once you do, your brain will have evidence. Evidence that escape is possible. And that evidence will change everything. I've created a free one-page mini plan to help you get started. It walks you through exactly how to identify your easiest win and take action immediately. No complicated spreadsheets, no overwhelming strategies, just a simple, actionable plan. You'll find the link in the description below. Download it now, print it out, and start today. Because you're not trapped. You're just one small win away from proving it to yourself. Let's go.